This program is presented by University of California Television. Like what you learn? Visit our website or follow us on Facebook and Twitter to keep up with the latest UCTV programs.
All right, welcome to the third week of the mini medical school here at UCSF, the Medicine of Cycling edition. My name is Mark Abramson. I'm a co-founder of Medicine of Cycling. I'm also vice chairman of USA Cycling, and I run a software company as my day job. My wife, Anna, in the back, is an attending physician here at UCSF, and obviously we are both very passionate cyclists. We're very excited to bring some of the top talent from our annual medical conference that's usually held in Colorado Springs, Colorado, back here to the Bay Area for you, our audience. You can find out more about our organization at medicineofcycling.com. Our first speaker is Dr. Jim Taylor. Dr. Jim Taylor, PhD, specializes in the psychology of performance in sport and business. He is an adjunct professor in the sports management graduate program at the University of San Francisco. He's been the team psychologist for the Subaru, Gary Fisher, and Trek VW mountain bike professional teams. He's the author of 14 books, 750 articles, and has given more than 1,000 workshops all around the world. In addition to all of that, he's also a former alpine ski racer, two-time Ironman competitor, triathlete, and an avid cyclist riding both road and mountain. So without further ado, here's Dr. Jim Taylor.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here, and I have a great passion for cycling and a great belief in the role of the mind in cycling. And so we have a lot to cover tonight, so I'm going to get right to it. And I'd like to start off with a couple of questions. First, how important is the mental side of cycling compared to the physical and technical side? And I want to take a little poll here. Raise your hand if you believe the mental side of cycling is less important than the physical and technical side. Good, we have a couple of courageous people willing to raise their hand in front of a psychologist. How many of you think it's as important? Raise your hand. Wow. How many think it's more important? Wow, even more. I have to tell you how much I appreciate all you people who say it's more important, but even as a psychologist, I don't believe the mind is more important. But it is an essential piece of the puzzle. The reason I don't think it's more important is because you can have all the mental stuff in the world, but if you're not physically capable of riding, all the mental stuff doesn't matter. But it is an essential piece of the puzzle. It is something that's often, unfortunately, neglected. And what I hope to do for the rest of my time with you this evening is educate you a little bit about the role of the mind, because we all know it's important, but how specifically it's important, I'll explore that. Next question is, should peak performance be your goal? And most people think of peak performance as performing at your highest level, doing the very best you can. Sounds like a pretty good goal. But as I became more experienced as a psychologist, as a writer, I came to appreciate the power of words. And I decided that peak performance wasn't highly descriptive of what I wanted the athletes I worked with to achieve. And I struggled for a couple years coming up with a phrase that was better. And if you look at peak performance, what's wrong with peak performance? Well, first of all, once you get to the top, there's only one place to go. And the drop is usually precipitous. That's the nature of peak. Also, the point of reaching that peak is very short. And also, you can reach your peak a week early or a week after the competition or a big ride you have. So I struggled with it for a couple of years, and I finally had a meeting of timing and readiness. I was walking through the grocery store through a meat section, and I saw a piece of beef with a sticker on it that said prime cut. Prime cut. And I had my little aha experience. I went home to my office and looked up the word prime, and it was defined as of the highest quality or value. Of the highest quality or value. So I finally had my thing, what I call prime performance, or in this case, prime cycling. Now here's how I define prime cycling. riding at a consistently high level under the most challenging conditions. Riding at the highest, consistently high level under the most challenging conditions. Two important words in that definition. Can anybody here figure what those two words are? Of course you can. First, consistency. What makes the great cyclists great is not their ability to go out and have one good ride, one good training ride, or one good stage ride, or one good race. What makes the great ones great is their ability to go out there day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, year in and year out, and ride at a consistently high level. Second important word there is challenging. Anybody can go out and ride their bike, here in the Bay Area, for example, when it's 70 degrees, when it's beautifully sunny, when you're totally on your game. But what makes the great ones great is their ability to go out and ride their best when things aren't good. When you've got one of those marina-style headwinds. When you're going up the back of up toward Alpine Dam from Fairfax and it's really hard. That's what makes the great ones great. So your goal when you ride, I don't care if you're just a weekend warrior or you're a serious competitor. Your goal is to experience prime cycling. And the question is, can prime cycling be learned? A lot of people think that mental stuff, you either have it or you don't, and if you don't have it, you can't get it. But what prime cycling is about developing skills. Just like you develop technical skills to climb and descend and so on, well, you can also develop mental skills in very much the same way. And my goal for you is to leave here tonight with a toolbox. A toolbox filled with mental tools. Now the great thing about a mental toolbox, it doesn't weigh anything. It's not going to weigh you down. It's not like carrying tubes or wrenches or what have you. It doesn't weigh anything, and yet you can pull tools out of that toolbox when you need to. And I'll describe some situations in which you'll need to. And I will be describing to you tonight many, many tools that you can use. So first question is, what race are you competing in if you're a competitive cyclist? Well, there are actually 3 races that you compete in every time you get on your bike in a formal race. The first one is the obvious one, the competitive one against other competitors. But before you can win the competitive race, there's another race you have to win. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking the mental race, right? Not yet. It's the one against the course. The course is trying to whoop you. The course is trying to crush you to get you to stop and beg for mercy. And if you don't win the race against the course, you can't possibly win the race against the competitive field. But before you can win the competitive race, and before you can win the race against the course, you must win, yes, the mental race. How many of you have been out for a ride, and maybe you're climbing up out of Stinson, or climbing over Marshall Grade, and you start thinking, I can't do this. This stinks, I hate this, what am I doing out here? As soon as I see a lot of hands go up. As soon as that happens, game over. The hill, the ride, the course is beating you. So it's all about staying on winning the mental race. Because if you win that, you can win the race against the course, and you can win the race against your competitors if you're in that kind of race. Now, the hard thing about the mental side of sport, mental side of ski racing, is that it's not tangible. You want to see how strong you are? You get on a stationary bike with a power meter. You can check your heart rate. Technique, you can see yourself on video. A coach can give you feedback on how to descend or how to climb better. But the mental side, we all know it's important, but it's these ethereal concepts or mental stuff sort of floating around out there, or actually more accurately in your head. So what I've done is I've created what I call the prime cycling framework. And they're the 6 mental areas that I believe are most important for you to ride your best. Motivation, confidence, stress, focus, emotions, and pain. Actually, I have a little typo there. Instead of stress, it should be intensity. So those are the 6 mental areas that you need to overcome, you need to develop tools to address when you're out riding. Start with motivation, the determination and drive to achieve your goals. And your goal might be to ride a century. Your goal might be to do a ride down the coast. It might be to win a race, become a Cat 1 rider, whatever it might be. But that is the foundation. It's at the bottom of the pyramid. Why? Because motivation is everything. It's at the foundation of the pyramid, because without motivation, nothing else matters. You're not going to get out of bed. You're not going to get on the bike. You're not going to do the work necessary. It is the foundation of all success in cycling and, in fact, in life. Effort versus goals. I often ask people, especially young cyclists who are competitive, how many of you have big goals? And all their hands fly up. They want to go to the Olympics. They want to ride in the Tour. Then I ask, how many of you are doing everything you possibly can to achieve your goals? How many hands do you think go up? Not too many. Now there's a problem here if there's a disconnect between effort and goals. Now there are 2 options here. You can either lower your goals or raise your effort. There's no right answer here. If you don't want to go for the big goals, that's fine. I'm not here to force you to do that. But if you have big goals, you have to look at yourself and say, am I doing the work necessary? Because people, it's easy to dream about wanting to have a great ride, be a great racer, whatever it is. But talk is cheap. You got to put in the time. Third is the grind. This is a concept I came up with a couple of years ago. And it goes like this. No matter how much you love to ride, raise your hand if you love to ride. It's such a rhetorical question. You wouldn't be here if you didn't love to ride. No matter how much you love to ride, you get to the point where with all that love, you're on your bike, it's no longer fun. It's a little boring, it's tiring, it hurts. You'd rather be doing something else. When most people experience the grind, what do? They give up, they quit, they ease up. They stop for coffee. But for cyclists who really have those big goals, and the great cyclists, when they hit the grind, they realize that's when it really starts to matter. That's what's going to make the difference between those who achieve their goals and those who don't. And that's when they push harder. Because again, that's the point they know that makes the difference. So next time you go out for a ride, and maybe you're climbing up Tam, and you're getting near the top, and it's kind of hard and you're tired, you think, oh yeah, this is that point that guy talked about. This is the grind, and this is when I'm going to keep going, because that's when you make the most deposits in that bank. So what can you do to take action with motivation? First, focus on your long-term goals. It's especially important when you're hurting the most to focus on why you're hurting. Because your body is communicating very powerfully that it wants you to stop. And if your mind says, okay, I'll stop, game over, you're not going to achieve your goals. But if you remember, okay, I'm doing this because I want to ride that century, or I want to qualify for nationals, or win that race, or whatever it is, that does a couple of things. First of all, it draws your focus away from that pain, which eases the pain. Second of all, it produces some powerful emotions, which I'll talk about in a little bit, that inspire you, that help dull the pain. And it focuses you on what you want to do. So first step, focus on those long-term goals. Have a reason for why you're hurting out there. Have a training partner or group. How many of you people like to ride with people? Yeah, misery loves company. Also, it's just fun to cycle. You can socialize, you can talk as you're working hard. Plus, no matter how hard, in most cases, no matter how hard you ride alone, you're probably going to ride that much harder with somebody there. Whether it's because you're competitive or because you start to support each other. And I can tell you as a guy, when I was training for my Ironmans, one of the greatest challenges for me was riding with other people because, of course, the testosterone kicks in. And I wanted to keep up with people who I couldn't keep up with. But you know what? They don't keep results of training days. You win if you stick with your program, if you do what you're supposed to do. And that might be staying within your aerobic range. If you're competitive, identify your greatest competitor. Think about, what is he or she doing? Well, you know what? I want to whoop them next time I ride with them. And it might just be a social ride, but it can still get a little competitive, right? So think about them and, okay, I need to do a little bit more. I need to do that extra little bit that's going to help me beat whether it's my best friend or the competitor in the upcoming race. Ultimately, though, you got to compete for the right reasons. You got to ride for the right reasons. You have to want it because you want it. How many of you are forced to ride your bike? Yeah, you do it because you choose to. One person. Hopefully you do it because you love it. Otherwise, what's the point? And there are tons of benefits to cycling, and whatever reason you do it for, as long as you know those reasons and they're good ones. From Fausto Coppi, ride your bike, ride your bike. Pretty simple stuff when it comes to motivation. Confidence. How strongly you believe in your ability to achieve your goals. How strongly you believe in your ability to achieve your goals. Why is it so important? Because even though it's actually second on the pyramid, it is what I believe the most important mental factor. Because you can have all the ability in the world, let's say to ride at a certain pace or go a certain distance, but if you don't believe in that ability, you're not going to push yourself to maintain that speed because you think you're going to blow or bonk. You're not going to ride that distance because you think you're going to crash, metaphorically speaking, at mile 80 instead of mile 100. So a big part of what you do as you train, as you ride, is not only developing the physiological capabilities to go the distance, to go the speed, but developing a belief in those abilities. Confidence is a skill, people. Again, like I said earlier, a lot of people think, well, I've never had much confidence. I've gotten negative a lot. That's just sort of the way I'm wired. Not true. And I can tell you from my own experience, as well as my work with many athletes, confidence is a skill you develop with practice. Confidence challenge. It's easy to stay positive, motivated, and confident when things are going well. My challenge to you is being able to stay positive and motivated and confident when things aren't going well. When you're cramping, when you're hurting, when you get dropped. That is what makes the difference, because your mind is already surrendering. If your body's already surrendering. If your mind surrenders too, it's over. What's remarkable, and there's been some wonderful research about this, that whenever you think there's nothing left, there's always something left. It's wired into us from when we're out in the Serengeti hunting game. The primitive people would have to go for hours at a time running and walking, chasing their game. But the body learned through evolution, through adaptation, to always keep something in reserve. Because once they got the game, what did they need to do? Kill it. Well, get home. Because the meat is no good unless they can bring it home to feed their family. So that's wired into us. So anytime you think there's nothing left, there's always something left. But you need to believe that there's something left. Otherwise, you're not going to access that reserve. So what can you do to take action? First of all, the single greatest way to build confidence is through preparation. Every time you go for a ride, you're putting money in the bank. And your goal is to put as much money in that bank as possible. Because for that big ride, that big race, you want to be able to write as big a check as possible. And there's no overdraft protection in cycling. You can't write checks that you can't cover. It's usually funnier than that, but anyway. So I think it's very clever, but okay. So your goal is to be prepared. When you get to the line for the century ride or for that big race, what I want you to be able to say to yourself is, I'm as prepared now is typically not something that's going to kill us during a ride. It protected us from saber-toothed tigers and from rival tribespeople, but it doesn't help us push ourselves. So we have to change our perspective on it. And there are two parts to pain, because a lot of people think, now wait a minute, pain is physical, it's not mental. But the research is very clear that we experience pain through a lens of our mind. How we look at our pain influences how we experience pain. So putting pain in perspective. A number of years ago, I was out with a group of guys on a 80-mile ride over Marshall Grade, and it was hard, and we get back and we're sitting around feeling pretty good about ourselves, and one of the guys says, man, that was a sufferfest out there. And we all did. It definitely was, yeah. But I do a lot of speaking for the Leukemia Society team in training, and I got to be thinking about, is what we're experiencing out there really suffering? I go, you know what people with cancer experience, that's suffering. I assume it hurts more. I haven't had cancer, but I assume it hurts more than a bike ride suffering. They can't turn it off, and they can't control it. Okay, so what we experience is definitely not suffering. How about pain? Well, you know what? I've had some serious injuries in my day, and pain, what I experience on a bike is not nearly as bad as what I experience with a serious injury. Again, more severe injury is an injury, and you can't just turn it off. Okay, so it's not pain even. Whoa, we're losing some drama here, people. So you know what it really is? It's physical discomfort. Physical discomfort, because it's not that bad, and we can turn it off anytime we want. We just get off the bike. But we need our sense of heroicism, however diluted it is, and to say that was a physical discomfort fest. Just doesn't work, does it? But I have a hard time using suffering because that's disrespectful to the people who really suffer. But you know what? Four-letter word, pain, let's call it that, but let's keep it in perspective and know what it really is. Also, how we interpret pain. First of all, pain is normal. It's a part of what we do as cyclists. It's also, as I indicated, why we do it. It means we're working hard. And I truly believe that if cycling wasn't hard, we wouldn't do it. Because the pain tells us that we're pushing ourselves, we're challenging ourselves, we're exposing ourselves to things about ourselves that we didn't know about. So pain is actually something we seek out every time we choose to get on our bike. But it doesn't feel good. So what do we do about it? First, relax. Research is very clear that when we're in pain, our body perceives the situation as a threat. And so what does it do? It circles the wagons. It goes to protect ourselves. So we go like this to protect ourselves. Unfortunately, it creates more pain. So taking deep breaths, relaxing our muscles, reduces the pain. Using the pain as information. Fascinating research on marathoners found that inexperienced marathoners tended to dissociate from their pain. They would distract themselves. But elite marathoners, they associated with it. They paid attention to it because it gave them valuable information about their pace, about their body position, about their stride. So use the pain as information. Maybe I have too big a gear. Maybe I need to change my body position. Then generate positive thoughts and emotions. Some fascinating research that looked at this found that when people connect pain with negative thoughts and negative emotions, they experienced more pain. Now, unfortunately, the golden days of scientific research is over where you can actually make somebody suffer. You remember the old shock? Anyway, yeah. These days, the way they evoke pain that can't be harmful is have people put their hands in really cold water. It's not that heroic there, but it does seem to work. So the point is that next time you start to feel pain on your bike, create some positive thoughts and positive emotions. The research shows that when you connect positive emotions and positive thoughts, you feel less pain. Doesn't make it go away, but you feel less pain. So you're riding up that hill. Should you be saying things like, oh, I'm loving this, this is great, this is such a fun time? That's not realistic. But you can say, I'm working hard, I'm achieving my goals, this is why I'm out here. How about some positive emotions? That's a tough one. I struggled for a while trying to come up with some positive emotion. Joy? Definitely not. Excitement? Serenity? Definitely not the case. I did come up with two. Inspiration and pride. Because when you're hurting out there, that's where that heroicism comes from. It's inspiring to push yourself to new limits. And that gives you great pride. And so those are two emotions in the worst possible emotional time when you're riding your bike you can generate. From Scott Martin, at cycling's core lies pain. It doesn't matter if you're sprinting for an Olympic medal, a town sign, a trailhead, or the rest stop with the homemade brownie. And you know what's in those in San Francisco. If you never confront pain, you're missing the essence of the sport. So to wrap things up, what's the payoff? Increased motivation, deep and resilient confidence, a relaxed state of intensity, the ability to focus for long periods of time, positive emotions and the ability to handle negative emotions, and then the ability to best master your pain, which of course brings you back to prime cycling, performing at a consistently high level under the most challenging conditions. And if you can experience prime cycling, you will experience some version of this. Thank you very much. So I believe we have a few minutes for questions. So open up. Yes, sir. Okay, so with new technology, the use of GPSs and heart rate monitors and power monitors and Strava, how does that affect training? In many ways, it's a valuable tool. Those are powerful tools because they provide great information for you. And the more information you have, that's tools in your mental toolbox that you can use to ride better. I think Strava is great motivationally because if you put your ride up that you just did on the web, and then you see somebody else just beat you by 2 minutes, well, that might motivate you to get out there and push you even more. Well, I think what you have to be careful about, though, is that with all this technology, you can lose touch with your own internal monitoring systems. And for a long time, I was addicted to my heart rate monitor. And if I started to go a little too high, I'd go, oh my gosh, I got to back off. And then I was out with a friend who didn't use one. He said, look, turn it off. And I haven't used it since because I've been riding enough that I know how my body works and I know when I'm starting to hurt and I know when I need to back off. So I think there's a balance there because I think ultimately you can't be totally wired when you're racing or necessarily going out for a long ride. And part of the experience is learning to experience and monitor and evaluate and then adjust what the messages your body's sending you. Other questions? Yeah. I mean, masochism doesn't carry really wonderful connotations, but certainly we all do what we do. Anybody who pushes themselves to the limits has a degree of masochism in them, but I don't think it's necessarily pleasure in the pain, and this is where we might make a distinction. It's pleasure in what the pain brings you in terms of satisfaction, meaning, joy, again, finding new challenges, etc. A couple things. First of all, there's been some fascinating research that has found that aging in and of itself, that is physical deterioration, can't adequately explain the decline that most people make in the years over an athletic endurance sport life. Now, when you get to a certain age, and I'm not going to give numbers at this point, there is an inevitable drop, but they found that if athletes maintain the same level of training, volume, and intensity, they can maintain their times very closely up into their 60s. And the reason why most people slow down when they get older is because their motivations change. For example, in my 30s and early 40s, I was single and I had plenty of time to train, so that's all I did. But then I got married and had kids, and now I get out for an hour and a half for a ride on weekends. So of course I'm not going to be in as good a shape because I don't put in the mileage. So that's one thing. Second of all, you have to change your point of reference. You know, when you're in your 30s, you compare yourself to the very best guys in the field. Then when you get into your 40s, you start looking at guys maybe in their 30s and see how you stack up against them. Then maybe you get a little higher and then you look at where you are in your age group. And then you maybe get a little farther along and then you say, like, I'm happy where I'm at. I'm just enjoying being out here. Because ultimately, especially in endurance sports like cycling, no matter what you do, no matter how good you are, unless you're the very best, somebody's always going to be faster than you. Of course, there's always going to be people slower than you and you hope you pass them and they pass you in some sort of balance. But ultimately, that stuff doesn't matter. Nobody cares when somebody zooms by you. They're not thinking, oh, what a loser. They don't. You know what? They don't think about you at all. So there's no reason to feel bad, like, oh, that guy's flying by me. You know, they don't care. Oh, the only person who cares about how you ride is you. And if you can just stay focused on, I'm out here having a great time, I'm staying fit, I'm loving life, victory, for sure. Okay, final couple of points. My website, about 95% I've written is on there. Tons of newspapers, articles. I also have a blog with a whole section on cycling. I write for Pez Cycling News every couple of months. Go to the website, tons of stuff there. If you have any individual questions or comments, feel free to email me. I appreciate when anybody emails me, so I'm happy to respond for sure. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. I've enjoyed it.